Hello and welcome to our conversation about Biltmore Winery with winemaker Sharon Fenchak. My name is Taya Schlendorf with Benson Marketing Group. We've still got a couple people joining in here. And I've got, my colleague, Kristen Monty. Of course, we have Sharon, and we are also joined by Marissa Jameson of the Biltmore Estate team. So we're looking forward to talking about all things Biltmore today. I want to give you just a couple points of to keep in mind to know about. One has to do with the lineup of wines. If you want to get those ready to taste along, we'll be tasting them in the order of the Biltmore Reserve North Carolina Chardonnay, then the Vanderbilt Reserve Russian River Valley Pinot Noir, followed by the Biltmore Estate Cabernet Sauvignon, and finally the Biltmore Estate limited release dry Riesling. Two other exciting things I want to let you know about before we even get started. 2020 has been an interesting year, but very excitingly, it's something of a milestone year for Biltmore. There's two key anniversaries happening for them this year. There's the 35th anniversary of the opening of the Biltmore Winery, and secondly, the 125th anniversary for when the estate was open to the public to welcome guests by George Vanderbilt. We would love to have you join in, ask some questions. We want this to be pretty interactive. We're going to start it off with a kind of question and answer conversation between myself and Kristen and Sharon, but at any point, please pipe up, ask your questions, or put them into the chat function. We'll get those asked in. I want to introduce Sharon Fenchak. Sharon, why don't you take it away and tell us all about your background and how you came to work at Biltmore Winery.
Sure, thank you very much. I actually first kind of fell in love with wine at a very young age. I tried to make wine when I was about 9 years old with some of my grandmother's grapes from her little arbor, so that was a lot of fun. My little grape experiment did not turn out very well, but I knew that I was really fascinated by fermentations and science. So I attended Penn State University and studied food science, and then University of Georgia for food science, and recently received my MBA.
Yeah.
But right after University of Georgia, I was working at some wineries in Georgia and applied for the job at Biltmore. And I started at Biltmore as assistant winemaker.
Oh, there we go.
And then was promoted to winemaker about 3 years after. And more recently, in 2018, I replaced Bernard Gillot as vice president and winemaker at Biltmore. So I've been at Biltmore now since 1999. It's really, really hard to imagine in my mind that that's even the case. But it's a really fantastic place to work, and you get to explore a lot of different grapes in the field because we do buy grapes from all over the United States. Now, the winery itself, we are actually in our 35th year. So we're celebrating that anniversary this year in the present day winery. And we actually have a vineyard on property. Am I going too fast?
No, I am just, I'm screwing up the technology end of things.
That's okay. It's okay. It happens all the time on Zoom calls. It's perfect.
Yeah. We'll just, but yeah, here we are, Biltmore Estate, a really gorgeous shot of the estate itself.
Yeah, so the Biltmore Estate, has been around since 1895. And so we decided, or not we, the family decided a long time ago that we needed to have a vineyard on property. And so that the actual vineyard itself was planted a little bit before 1985, but we actually experimented with some other grapes in the mid-70s. So we started off with a fairly large vineyard, around 200 acres, but then quickly realized that certain varietals did not do well in our climate of Western North Carolina. So today we have a little over 50 acres, and we have planted Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and then actually a little bit of a Petite Manseng. So that's a new varietal for us that we actually should hopefully be getting a few grapes from this year. So it's beautiful, as you can see. We do have some challenges with weather, as every Eastern winery has. At least we don't have the fires that California has, so that's kind of a plus for us right now. But it is challenging, so any year that we can actually produce fruit from the vineyard for high quality, I'm thrilled that we can use it in a North Carolina wine. So today we'll actually be tasting one of those wines, our North Carolina Biltmore Reserve Chardonnay.
So Sharon, you mentioned, of course, it is North Carolina, even within the United States, wasn't exactly the first place that people thought to plant grape varieties. So in George's time, he didn't have the benefit of really being able to have a big selection of U.S. wines to serve to his guests. So
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how, what did his life look like with regard to wine?
We know a little bit about the research behind that, and he shipped a lot of wine over from obviously out of the country. And the wines were actually, I wouldn't want to say common, but they were pretty normal wines for a man of his wealth and stature at that time. Marissa, do you know exactly? I'm blanking on the name of the wines that he actually produced or he actually purchased.
I don't, but I can pull that info while we're on this call. But I think there were some from Bordeaux.
Right.
That's the one that's coming to mind right now.
Right. But the one thing that George did with his family and friends was he loved to entertain. And that's the whole thing about Biltmore is the hospitality, coming to this fantastic house, just being caught up in the enchantment of the environment and eating great food, drinking great wine, spending lots of time with your friends and family. And then, of course, bringing that product home with you. So we want to just kind of extend that whole hospitality to your own personal dinner table and friends and family, even if you have left Biltmore. So the idea of gracious hospitality is just so prevalent all over the estate and anywhere you go. If you're staying at the inn, going to the winery, taking an outdoor trip or whatever on property, we really go through a lot of training. And the big thing with Biltmore is getting the right person on the right seat on the bus. So we spend a lot of time in just making sure you have the right personality and credentials to work at Biltmore. It's really a fantastic place.
Yeah, Sharon, if I may jump in, I just want to give everybody a very quick overview of what Biltmore is today, just in case you're not familiar. But Biltmore was the vision of George Vanderbilt, as Sharon was saying. It was his family home in 1895. They were still run by the original descendants of George Vanderbilt, and our mission is preservation of the estate. So we're at 8,000 acres, and we have Biltmore House, which is the largest privately owned house in the United States, and that operates like a museum. So our guests come to Biltmore, and they tour the home, and they see the original collection of furniture and art that was owned by George Vanderbilt. And then we also have beautiful gardens that were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, who also did Central Park. And then we have 7 restaurants on property, 2 hotels, an outdoor adventure program, an equestrian center, wedding venues. So it's really an amazing property that spans the gamut of hospitality.
Thanks, Marissa. This is why I love Marissa. She helps me with the questions a lot.
Yeah, so fast forwarding now to 1985, wine at the Biltmore Estate took on a whole new a whole new level. That's one of the key anniversaries you're celebrating this year. So let's pick up the story there in 1985. What the image that we're looking at here? What is this building?
Right. This is actually the tunnels. We used to store our sparkling wine. That's a tunnel that you enter as you're coming into the winery. So when Antler Hill Village opened, we actually opened these tunnels back up, and this is now the entrance of the winery. So it's kind of cool. You kind of walk in through a cave, through these tunnels, and then come up into the tasting room. So it definitely gives you the feeling of being in a wine cave. And you can see in this picture, the clock tower. So the clock tower is part of the original dairy. The winery was actually a dairy for a very long time until it was converted into the winery in 1985. So there's a lot of history in this particular building. We try to keep it as historical as we can and preserve it to its highest capacity. And so we actually are considered to be one of the most visited winery in the United States. People find that very hard to believe. Being in North Carolina, we have a lot of tourists that come onto the property and then come to the winery. We many times serve as the first opportunity for somebody to taste wine. So it's hard to imagine that someone hasn't really tasted wines before unless they're just turning 21, but serves as an educational place for a lot of people and introducing them into that first taste of wine. So we have a wide range of wines for people to choose from a sweet Chenin Blanc to a Napa Cabernet Sauvignon and sparkling in between. So there's a whole range in our portfolio that allows people to find something that they truly do love. And it's the best thing is when you actually find something when you're tasting with someone that their eyes just light up and they're super excited about what they just tried. So that's always fun for me as a winemaker.
So Sharon, today you are working with grapes from several areas across the country, vineyards on the estate in North Carolina and beyond. How does that help shape the diversity of the wines Biltmore can offer?
Right. If we were just restricted for the grapes that we can grow in North Carolina, it would be restricted to, like I said, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot, and that a little bit of Petit Manseng that we're trying out and hopeful that it'll be a great varietal for us. So the North Carolina climate is not conducive to several of the grapes on this wheel, one of which would be that Pinot Noir because it's very thin-skinned. Riesling is also a grape that doesn't do super great in humidity. And so what we try to do is we try to find the grapes that do the best in their specific areas and purchase that fruit. So we are actually bringing the fruit to us in North Carolina because we cannot grow all these grapes in our area. And most wineries cannot grow all of the grapes they want to make in their area. And so they do purchase from all different regions, all different areas. The only difference is that we are actually transporting those grapes, that juice, that wine across the country from California or Washington to North Carolina. So from a winemaking standpoint, it's a lot of fun. You know, we can play with all these, I call it playing with all these different grapes and try to come up with a profile or a grape that really works well with our consumers. And you get to blend these different grapes from a lot of these different areas. For instance, in our American series wine, that's what we do. So we can be very consistent with our blends year after year.
Well, let's start with your home territory of North Carolina. I mean, that's certainly a place that I can say I'm not as familiar with wines from there, but let's dig into more of what those estate vineyards and what that sort of area has to offer before we really look at it through the lens of the first wine that we'll be tasting.
Yes, in North Carolina, what we try to do is we try to purchase fruit from local growers of high quality from the area. A grower that we've been working with for a long time, we're growers, is from Polk County, which is about 45 minutes south of Asheville. It's a little bit warmer there, so occasionally in Asheville we can get a spring frost that can, sometimes harm the grapes. Oh, no, not harm the grapes, ruin the grapes, you know, if it gets too cold in the winter time. And so Polk County has a little bit slightly higher temperatures. The Biltmore Vineyard has, we're about 2,600 feet elevation. And so that allows for a good differential of day and night temperatures. So our reds from the Biltmore Vineyard seem to be, I might be slightly biased, higher quality than some of the hotter areas from the state. There are grapes available all over North Carolina, but typically we stay within this western area of the state for purchasing. We will occasionally purchase in the Yadkin Valley, which is a little bit more east of Asheville, but normally it's within this region.
I just have to say, I can't believe I never noticed this before, but I'm reading that North Carolina's state soil type is known as sessile. And this is particularly interesting for the rest of the group, because sessile is actually the last name of George Vanderbilt's, some of his descendants, his grandson, some of the current generation of the family that is still involved with the Biltmore Estate today. And I just find that to be really interesting. Is that purely a coincidence, or is that something a bit more, with a bit more of a relationship there?
I could make up a story, but I think it's a coincidence. Marissa, do you know anything different about that?
I don't know.
Yeah. But you just made me think about it a little bit more. I'm gonna ask Mr. Cecil about that and see if there is some type of connection.
That's great. Well, yeah, let's okay. Let's actually, shall we dive into tasting the first wine? We'll come back and talk about some of the other
I think that's
other areas.
So the first wine, if you have your wines out, will be our North Carolina Chardonnay. And that is actually from the vineyard. If you have a glass, please. I hope I'm not the only one drinking, right? So the North Carolina Chardonnay is a product where we can typically produce year after year. It does really well for us. It's probably one of our best growing grapes for us in North Carolina and at the Biltmore Vineyard. You know, each year is a little different and a little challenging, but 2018 was actually a year where we had a lot of rain, but we were still able to produce a really nice product. And we actually have blended in a little bit of California and Washington fruit with this particular wine. Typically with the North Carolina Chardonnay, we allow it to go through the fermentation in the barrel. So it's barrel fermented. So the oak that we use is usually medium toast plus oak. So that adds a lot of vanilla and caramel in the wine. And then we actually want some of it to go through malolactic fermentation, but not all of it. I'm not a super fan of over buttery or over oaked Chardonnays. So the style of this is that it's balanced with the malic acid and then the lactic acid from the malolactic fermentation, and just hints of oak that you can taste. So I'm going to taste it, right? Is anyone else tasting? Marissa, are you? Yes?
I don't have my wine.
Hmm.
I'm in the office, not in the vineyard, but.
That's a shame. So, like I said, if you're tasting with us, you know, you have the hints of the oak and vanilla. It's round from the malolactic. There's some butter notes in it. This is just one of the wines that people seem to enjoy a lot at the winery, and they'll ask for it year after year. It's been a consistent seller for us, not only on the property, but also off-site and in restaurants and some boutique shops also. So it's a product that we're very, very proud of. The vineyard manager's name is actually Philip Oglesby, and he's been with I think he's been with Biltmore since 1997. So we seem to have this great longevity with a lot of the people that work at the winery and the vineyard. So that's, you know, your quality and consistency year after year is easier if you have people that are retained for longer periods of time. So this is a wine that, like I said, has done very well for us. Does anybody have any questions about the wine? Okay. So,
I just have one quick question. How long have you been making Chardonnay wines from grapes?
we have been making Chardonnay since the winery started.
Okay.
Yeah, so for a very long period of time. We did start a lot of the grapes that were planted at the vineyard when it first started was Riesling. We planted over 200 acres of Riesling. Not the whole acreage, but a lot of it was Riesling. And it was pretty much, the vineyard was wiped out by really bad frost. And so we had to regroup and restart. And yeah, Chardonnay, some of the Chardonnay actually in this particular wine is from vines. I call it the mother vine. And I think it's from 1983, some of our oldest vines. Those are, of course, going to be coming out soon because, you know, the vines in the harsh winters and weather don't last like California vines. So you have to change them about every 25, 30 years. So they're past, some of them are past due.
So we see the words estate and also names of other AVs not in North Carolina on the wine. How do these fit into Biltmore's portfolio?
Right. So the Biltmore Estate wines, there we go. The Biltmore Estate wines are American appellated. And so because they're American appellated and they say Biltmore Estate, the name of Biltmore is Biltmore Estate. So it's not estate grown fruits. So that's something important to note when you are looking at the label. So not all of the fruit actually comes from Biltmore. Now, the Biltmore Reserve, the majority of the fruit will typically come from our North Carolina estate vineyard. But Biltmore Estate is just the name of the property, but it's not referencing the actual estate or the vineyard itself. So this gives us the ability to actually put grapes in from all these different regions and all these different areas and be creative and consistent as we want from year to year. So as a winemaker, it gives you a lot of flexibility with what you can do with the blend. So it's actually a lot of fun. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Cool, good.
So tell us about some of the areas that you really like that we're going to taste some fruit from in some of our upcoming wines from the California and Washington, which are the two states primarily that you're working with.
Yeah, all of the areas have their own little claim to fame for grapes. You know, that's why they're so specialized from those areas. We'll be tasting a Pinot Noir from Russian River. Of course, you know, Russian River is the place for Pinot Noir. So Worcester's fruit from that area. And then also in our Cabernet Sauvignon, we have fruit from all different areas in California, in Washington. There's just a touch of North Carolina. But Washington is actually interesting because years ago, you really couldn't find grapes from Washington to actually ship back, but the industry for grape growing has just exploded. And so now what we're able to do is we actually are able to ship back whole berry grapes to North Carolina, and we actually make the wine there and process the grapes in North Carolina. We also do some bulk producing in Washington, but the grapes from Washington, from a winemaking standpoint, they're beautiful. They have great acid. The sugars are good. I'm always excited to get this fruit every year. So we just got a phone call or an email that we'll be getting in our Tempranillo second week in September. So that's a little early. So Washington is a really neat area to get fruit from. Also too, you know, in California, because the state is so big, we purchase fruit the whole way down to Pasarolas, up to, the whole North Coast, Lake County, Mendocino, Sonoma, Napa, all over the place. So if there's something that I want to try or experiment with, I have the flexibility to find that particular grape or varietal that grows best in that area. So I call it grape shopping, and I get to go out and pick and find the best fruit that I want. And of course, at the right price too, and I get to be flexible with what we want to buy. And I just have to convince marketing that it's a good idea. And so Marissa's usually helpful with that too.
I love that phrase, grape shopping. And as you mentioned, one of your most look forward to purchases is the Pinot Noir from Russian River Valley. So let's get into that one.
All right, that was a good segue, right? So this particular wine, the Vanderbilt Reserve, Russian River, we've been making this particular wine, gosh, I'm trying to remember, I think at least since 2012, 2013, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And we started with this program because we wanted to buy some really great grapes from California. And the grapes are very expensive in California at some of these very specialized areas. So typically, if we were to transport that back to North Carolina, we would lose the ability to use the appellation and the vintage date at that time. So we had to come up with a plan to be able to bottle it in California and use that Russian River appellation so that we could then ask the price, whatever it is, because we were buying very expensive grapes. In any situation, my ideal scenario is to make the wine back in North Carolina. But because of the law, we actually have to make the wine in California. So for the Russian River Pinot Noir, we sourced from 2 different places in Russian River. And one of the vineyards is actually a lot more tannic and full-bodied. You get a lot of strawberry notes in it. And the other one is a lot softer. And so together, we meld them together. And then we make this delicious Pinot Noir that people just seem to love at Biltmore. We'll actually work with some partners in California, and they actually age the wine for us. They'll bottle the wine for us, but we have control in all of the decision making along the process. We have great relationships with many of these growers. Gosh, some of them we've been with the whole time that I've been at Biltmore and even before. So very long-term relationships. You have to trust the people you work with when you are 2,000 plus miles away. So, I'll go out to California a few times a year and I'll taste through the grapes or taste through the wines and make decisions about what to do, how to blend, and all those different points that I would do if I was actually there at the winery. We have a consultant winemaker also in California. His name is Bill Crawford, and he works mostly in the North Coast area, but he's my taste buds and nose and ears and eyes out there to let me know if there's any problems or anything going on. But the relationships for this particular program, the Vanderbilt Reserve, is extremely important and very valued for us. We have some great partners. So I think we should taste it now, right?
Absolutely. And maybe while you're swirling it, I just want to say I love the emphasis on the relationships there. That also strikes me as essentially a legacy from Biltmore, from George Vanderbilt's time. He cultivated a lot of relationships with so many different types of people. Those were the guests at his estate who were enjoying, the wines that he could share with them. So in another way, it's great to see that carry through from the original point of the estate. And again, with the hospitality theme, another fun fact I want to point out, because I didn't see this at first, but once I did, I really enjoy it. The label of this wine, the bottom half of it there, that's a close-up of a dinner plate with a monogram from the Vanderbilt which is just, I think it's really fun when you see that and you really understand that hospitality point.
And the in where it says Vanderbilt Reserve, that is a I think a linen from the table as well, and it's I think embossed a little bit, so you can actually feel it. So it's a tactile kind of connection to hospitality.
And one thing more about this particular wine, this is a 2018. And so we bottled this about a month and a half ago. And so it's going to age very well. It still has a lot of obvious tannins in it, but typically with our Vanderbilt Reserve wines, they should last anywhere from 5 to 10 years of aging very easily. I have to plug my computer in. 1 second. It just gave me a message. All right, we're safe now. So does anyone have any questions about the Pinot Noir?
How long have you been making the Pinot Noir?
This particular Pinot Noir, I think we started it in, I'm saying 2012, 2013 for sure. We've had the same growers. We've added one grower and subtracted another, but it's pretty consistent with our growers too.
Now, has climate change, has that impacted any of the wines at all?
Well, it's hard, like I've been doing this for about 25 years now, and I have seen harvest become earlier and earlier each year. And it's interesting to see, even after 20 years of time with North Carolina, typically the last few years we've been harvesting 1 week earlier than when I started at Biltmore. So for California right now, I think that, they're struggling with the wildfires. Is that directly related to environmental changes? I'm not sure, but it seems that the wildfires are becoming more of the norm now than when I started. I don't remember seeing or expecting wildfires every year. So in Europe, I know that, they're having difficulties growing certain varietals in certain areas because of increase in temperature. So I think that global warming does have an effect on, obviously, the fruit and the time of ripening. And I've just seen that in my own personal career.
I guess maybe as a corollary to that, does your relationship where you're sourcing from so many different places, does that give you some additional flexibility to handle those challenges in a way that other people might not be able to?
It does, because if one area is struggling or suffering one year, we can go to the other area. That's what I'm actually doing this year with the fires. Is several of the vineyards that we work with had some issues with smoke taint, and so I am using our partners in the industry to find fruit from other sources or other vineyards. I'm looking at possibly some more fruit in Washington, but Washington is having fires now too, but not in the areas of the grapes that we purchased from. So it's really sad, when you think about it, for those farmers and grape growers in that area. And I just feel for them from the bottom of my heart, because I know that it's devastating to work your whole year for this great crop and then not be able to harvest it or get something out of it. So it's a big struggle for them right now. So hopefully in the years to come, it'll reverse itself, but I'm not sure that it will.
Well, how is everybody enjoying that Pinot Noir? I know that was one of my favorites when I got the chance to visit and taste. But maybe it's also a good time to look at the Cabernet Sauvignon, since we've been talking about Washington and California.
Yeah, sure. So the Cabernet Sauvignon, this is a great example of all those different areas and partners. So you can see there's Washington and California, a little bit of just a touch of North Carolina. In Washington is a big player in this particular wine. Washington grapes, they're a good price for really great quality on many different levels. So you get a really big bang for your buck with the fruit from Washington, and they're really jammy and full of flavors. California also. And so what we'll do is we'll get these different grapes from these different areas and we'll blend them together. I'll keep all of the grapes and wine separate until we blend them at the very end. So there's fruit here from around the Monterey area, from Washington State. There's a little bit of fruit from North Carolina. There's some from around Hollister area also. So every year is a little different, the blend, but the grape sources are typically the same. So everything will be aged in barrels, typically a blend of mostly American with just a little bit of French oak barrels. And we try to age it for at least over a year. Ideally, I want them for about 15 months in oak before we actually bottle it. And it's a product that is doing very well for us on the outside market. Sales a few years ago just went really up, or they were up about 20% over the previous year. So I had to scramble and try to find more. So, you know, it seems like the Washington fruit is right on target with what the consumer wants for kind of that jammy fruit forward Cabernet Sauvignon. So I'm going to taste it. And of course it is American because, you know, the fruit does come from the different areas. A few years back, we weren't even allowed to put the vintage on the wines that were American appellated, but they changed that legislation. So now you know the year the grapes actually were harvested. So that's really, really good. And it's just really easy to drink, you know. As it's getting a little bit cooler. Here in North Carolina, I'm not sure where you guys are all from, or I think a lot of you are from up north, right? And so it's cooler and it's the perfect kind of fall wine. But it's also very approachable. We would suggest this about 3 to 5 years of aging. The wine in the American series is made with the intention that the person is going to drink it pretty quickly, that they're not going to lay it down for a long period of time. So that's the idea behind the American series. Is everyone enjoying the Cabernet? Do we have any questions about it?
How long have you been making the Cabernet?
The Cabernet exactly, well, we've had it since 1999 for sure. And I think almost the whole time the winery's been in existence. Maybe not the first few years, but I would say at least 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's North Carolina, or Biltmore itself, when it started out, you know, we were pretty much pioneers in this state when it came to the idea of growing Vitis vinifera in North Carolina. And the idea that we had this big winery, you know, in North Carolina was kind of crazy, you know, so it was a little out there, but, you know, the plan was there, the vision was there, the dream was there, and we just stuck with it and made it happen. And so it's like, since there's been, Philip Jourdan was the first winemaker at Biltmore, then there was Bernard DeLille, and then myself. So in the whole history, there's been 3 winemakers at Biltmore. And there's been a few assistant winemakers in between, but 3 main winemakers at Biltmore. So you have just that handing off of knowledge and information from one person to the next, and consistency and quality, and knowing the brand and the consumer, which the consumer in North Carolina is different often than the consumer in California. The taste is a little bit sweeter. You know, we may add 2 grams per liter sugar to something, you know, versus in California, you would never do that. So because we need very approachable wines in this series, and people are going to drink it pretty quickly. I don't want to say in their car leaving the estate, but it could be possible. So yeah, we want to, and we want them to buy it in the supermarket too and take it home with them later. Any other questions about the Cabernet? Or any other questions?
We have a question. What wines are the best sellers, or what are you most well known for?
What we're really well known for at the estate is often our sweeter wines, but that has been changing through the years. So we used to be, our number 1 seller would always be a limited release Chenin Blanc. Some of the sweeter wines, Riesling, Chenin Blanc, but a few years ago that has switched to now our number 1 seller can be our limited release Malbec, or one of our reds. So it's interesting how someone would go from like a 4% residual Chenin Blanc. We have that customer, and then we also have someone that would love a dry limited release Malbec. So it's kind of all over the place. Off property, Pinot Grigio, off property meaning our 3-tier system, their distributors. It would be Pinot Grigio, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, our Chardonnay. On site too, our North Carolina Chardonnay is very popular. And you know, our sweet wines still do very, very well because we are in the South, in the southern states. And so people might not be used to drinking wine every day. So that's a better first wine for them. Pinot Grigio has also just exploded for us through the years. And so I'm always looking for what's the next thing, what's the next trend, to try to jump on it before it gets too popular. So we were lucky with Pinot Grigio on that. And we just offer a whole range of different grapes. But yeah, it's Chenin Blanc is very popular for us at the winery, and then Malbec is also very popular.
What do you think might be the next big thing?
Oh, I can't tell you, because then, you know, no, I'm just teasing. You know, what I see right now, what we started to make recently was Mourvedre on Astral. And so that's what I started to source about 2 years ago. So I think Mourvedre fits very well with our customer. We just started to release one in 2018, so we're still waiting on, you know, how that's gonna come about or how that's gonna do. We have a Gewürztraminer, but it's that's just popular for us on the estate. I don't think that will just greatly take off. I hear a lot of chatter about Grenache Blanc, so I have some feelers out for that right now. And then we have Tempranillo is also one that we started a few years ago, along with Malbec. So of course Malbec has great popularity in South America and other places, and it's been a great seller for us. But I think Tempranillo, Malbec, and actually I sourced some Albarino this year, which is also a lot of fun. And so we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna trial that and see if it fits well with our consumer. I'm pretty excited about the Albarino. I've been looking for Albarino for a few years now.
Have you noticed any shift in purchasing habits during the pandemic?
Yes, I think people are purchasing more during the pandemic. So I think what we've seen an increase on actually in the 3-tier system, which is the grocery stores, is Pinot Grigio, actually a little bit of Riesling. Riesling purchases have increased. And I think too that there's been a little bit of this is just my own personal thing. I don't have stats for it or anything like that. But I think people are treating themselves a little better. You know, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck at home. I'm going to buy maybe a little bit more expensive wine or sparkling, or at least that's what I've been doing personally to make myself feel better for having to stay home and not go out. So, but yeah, I think people are buying wine, but I think they are, I'm personally buying special wines because I want to feel special during this time. But I think people are actually buying more less expensive wines. I think they're trading down a little bit, but I don't have actual facts for that. This is just my own personal opinion.
We were talking about Riesling, and you know, grape certainly that's known to be or produce a number of sweeter wines. This, of course, is the last wine in the lineup is, of course, the dry Riesling. Maybe that's a good segue to taste this one now.
Right now, that's great. Yeah, because I did mention Riesling. So our Riesling sales normally had been going down a little bit, but we actually started to make a dry Riesling on property, and it's our limited release series. And so it's in this pretty label and bottle. And so the limited release series are wines that are typically only sold on the estate and online. So it's something that I've decided is special, you know, deserves that kind of upper level wine. And so with the Rieslings, it's the grapes that I think are just from the better areas or taste great that year, have a really good acidity. And so that's what I've done with this particular wine. This one will actually have about half the amount of sugar as our normal Riesling. So we've seen a big, not a big shift, but a shift in consumers that typically drink sweet going a little bit more dry. And even on the outside market, we've seen that also. So we're playing around with lowering the sugar level on the Riesling that we do offsite also. But this one is about 12% is around, I'm sorry, 1% residual sugar. So our normal Riesling is around 2 to 2.2, 2.4% residual sugar. So it's about half the level. So this is a good one to end on after the reds, because it will appear a little bit more sweet than if we tried it right after the Chardonnay. So then it's always fun to go back and try the Chardonnay and this one, and it'll taste a lot different. But it's not overly sweet, just nicely balanced. And it, of course, is 100% stainless fermented. And, you know, I normally wouldn't want to put a Riesling in a barrel anyhow. I know some people do that, but that's not my style. No malolactic, just very crisp and clean. And I just want to go back to the, I kind of spaced out on the question about, are people buying different? Yes, people are buying different because our online wine sales have greatly increased. During COVID-19 and the pandemic, our tasting room was closed, as everyone's tasting room was closed. And we just saw over 200% increase in sales on our e-commerce and online purchases. So I think the whole way that people are buying wine has changed. My 80-year-old parents bought wine online. My dad does not even know how to use online, and he was able to find wine online. So I found that to be truly amazing. So I think that, you know, how people buy and purchase and the comfort level with doing that now is there for so many people. And I think that will continue in the future. So that's kind of interesting, and we're still studying what that looks like in marketing and how we can best arm ourselves for what we need to purchase, what we need to buy. Arm might be a strong word, but be prepared for how that might look different, because people may buy things differently if they have it delivered to their door versus in the supermarket when they have all these other competitors on the shelf. So does anyone have any questions about the Riesling? The Riesling actually, some of it comes from Solano County, and then also some of it comes from Arroyo Seco. So it's a blend of the two areas.
Just to tack on to the previous conversation, I think there was a question about if those online sales, if we knew whether or not those online sales were like what the distribution of them was, if there was a concentration from within North Carolina, or if it was seen more as coming from out of state. I don't have those figures off the top of my head. Marissa, do you know?
I wrote that down, and we can follow up. I believe it was Amanda who asked that question. So we'll follow up with you directly.
I think another point, maybe just to add to that conversation. There's the purchases from Biltmore's online store. There's also the wine club, which was growing exponentially even before the pandemic hit. But I think generally speaking, people have renewed an appreciation for the concept of a wine club, because we're buying everything online, but this is one less step of having to seek it out. It's coming to you, and you're also getting, some of the interesting little perks that you can benefit from as part of that wine club membership. I know Biltmore's mentioned that they have, and this may largely be people who are more locally located, but that was one of the few avenues of sort of like social interaction that they could take advantage of, was the pickup options every time a wine club offering was released, or the virtual tastings that came along with it. It just added this unique something else to enjoying wine during the pandemic that you don't necessarily get with a usual online purchase.
Mm-hmm. Right. The wine club, we have over 10,000 wine club members. And so that's a pretty significant number for us. And we're really, really supportive of the wine club members. We did, as mentioned, a virtual wine tasting when all of this started. And I didn't know what to expect. So I was just having a lot of fun with it. And everyone just seemed to have a blast. And they were so happy to be able to taste and interact and have a good time, because they were sick of being stuck in their house and not having interaction with other people. So we were trying during the pandemic to bring Biltmore to your house and your home with these different YouTubes and virtual tastings and these different things we've been doing. So finally I've learned how to work Zoom correctly, after a few after a few tries. Lighting is still a little struggle for me, but trying to have fun with it and realize that this is our new normal for now. Hopefully it won't be our normal forever. But just trying to help everybody get through this time in a way that's the healthiest for everyone, and interacting with friends and family, and enjoying wine and food. We did the last virtual tasting. We actually did a wine and cheese tasting, which we paired cheese with the wine. And so that was a lot of fun too. We had a lot of great comments back about that, and how everyone was having fun with their friends and interacting with them through Zoom. So we'll continue that in October. I think we have another one scheduled in October with the wine club. So I just happy to be interacting with folks and keeping them connected to the wine and Biltmore as much as I can. They're important to us.
A whole new addition to your resume. Expert.
I know, right? You would think. It's crazy. But it's all good, and it's fun, and it's good to connect. Does anyone have any questions about the wines or anything else?
I have a question.
Sure.
do you have a favorite? I know everyone hates that question, but everyone secretly has a favorite, so.
Right, right. Well, I actually, in the summertime, I love our Sauvignon Blanc, our Biltmore Estate Sauvignon Blanc. I like Sauvignon Blanc in general, and Bernard DeLille is my old boss, and he loves Sauvignon Blanc, so he said, "Young lady, if you screw this up, you're in trouble." So I have to keep Sauvignon Blanc good, and every year he comes by and he'll taste it. He's actually coming by tomorrow to the winery to taste through the Sauvignon Blanc with me. So I like Sauvignon Blanc. It's just clean. It's great for summer. I love our sparklings. I mean, you know, they're a challenging thing to make for us because we're not a sparkling house. So we actually have to work really hard to make that product. But I love it when there's lots of bubbles in the glass and it's beautiful and it smells great. And so it's a lot of fun for reds. I love Cabernet Franc, you know. And so I love it at Biltmore when we have a Cabernet Franc red that we can do. It doesn't happen that often because of the weather, but Cabernet Franc in general, we have a Vanderbilt Reserve Cabernet Franc that we do. And I like our Mourvedre that we just made up. That's kind of fun for me. And I'm interested to see how everybody does. So I didn't just choose one, I'm sorry.
So, thank you all for joining us. Certainly if you have any additional questions, reach out. We can put you directly in touch with Sharon. We can supply some other materials and information about Biltmore Estate and the winery.